Hello, Buckeye Nation! Welcome to Week 8, our final regular season game. Ohio State is playing TTUN this Saturday at the Shoe starting at 12 p.m. Let's get pumped! I want to start this week's show with a major disclaimer. At the time of this recording, the game against TTUN is still on. But as we all know this season, things can change in the blink of an eye. There is a very real possibility that for the first time in 103 years, the game may not be able to be played. However, I decided that regardless of whether we get to play TTUN this weekend, I still wanted to dedicate this show to the game. Plus, word is on the street that even if this game gets canceled, somehow, some way, there will at least be a game that we'll get to play. We'll see what happens. Before we get into the main attraction for this week's show, TTUN, can we just take a moment to talk about that game last Saturday? I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Justin Fields was an absolute beast. And what a rebound he made from that Indiana game. Going from 3 interceptions to 0, making something out of nothing from multiple bad snaps, blocking for his teammates, and basically doing everything he could and then some. And not only was his performance phenomenal, but there was also that pick 6 from Haskell Garrett, the Trey Sermon touchdown run, the touchdown run from Stroud, the interception by Wade, the amazing catches by Olave and Wilson, our O-line just holding it down, and the D-line just getting to Michigan State. And those punts, the ones that were down within the 5-yard line, I mean, I could go on and on. It was such an incredible game. All that, down 23 players, 4 coaches, and I'm not even sure how many staff members. On that note, my thoughts and prayers continue to be with those players, coaches, and staff members who tested positive for COVID. And I know. Michigan State is not a great team this year, but I'm still so excited from that victory last weekend. Now, let's talk about that team up north, ichigan, TTUN, or whatever else you call them. This is the week. Ryan Day made this fan base a promise. And I know we're all anxious to see those 100 points dropped on TTUN. Look, I completely understand that the national championship game is our end goal, and that the game has lost some relevance since TTUN hasn't made it competitive since, well, as long as I can remember. However, there's just something that burns inside of me whenever I think about this rivalry game. My dad used to tell me it doesn't matter what the record is of either team going into the game. It doesn't matter if you've been winning or losing. All bets are off when the game gets played. I'm a 3rd-generation Buckeye fan, and I was born and raised in the great state of Ohio. Being a Buckeye is so ingrained in me. Even though I haven't lived in Ohio for over 10 years, I still feel these feelings of despise bubble up inside of me whenever I see someone wearing maize and blue. I've got to look so ridiculous walking down the streets of LA, glaring at that poor stranger who just happens to be wearing an ichigan shirt. You guys with me? In honor of the game, I wanted to bring an extra special guest on the show this week, my father. He's the person who taught me to be a Buckeye fan, and he's one of the most amazing guys I know. Hi, Dad. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. This is such a treat.
Hi, Lisa. I was honored that you asked me to be on your show.
Well, I'm so happy that I get to have you on this show. So you've been a Buckeye fan for quite some time now, and you're the one who actually passed your Buckeye fandom down to me.
Yes, I passed it down to my kids, but I actually got it from my dad, who was a Buckeye fan back in the Woody Hayes era. And if you look at their history, he was coach for almost 30 years. And you think of like Urban Meyer was there 6 or 7 years, and Tressel was there, 8 or 9 years, but he was there 3 times as long as they were. So I guess I got it from my dad.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's incredible. That amount of time is mind-blowing.
And what he used to do was, he was a farmer, and on Saturday afternoons, of course, back then they didn't broadcast very many games on TV. So he would take his radio to the field where he worked, and he'd listen to a little bit of the game, and then he'd work a little bit, and then he'd listen to a little bit more of the game.
I love that story that you told me too, because I actually, when I can't watch the game on TV, I listen to the game on the radio. And since you told that to me, it just makes me feel like I'm listening to it with him in spirit, just listening to the game on the radio as opposed to watching it on TV.
Back in the 60s and 70s. Today's fans won't be able to grasp this, but they had rules in place where a major college football program could only be on the air 3 times every 2 years. So that means if they were on once this year, next year they could be on twice. And that's the whole season. So most of the games were on the radio. That's the only way you could get them.
Wow. I had no idea they did that.
Yeah, and it was a big game. Like, they always had the Michigan game on. But if there was a big game like against Indiana or Michigan State, and they had already used their allotment of TV game, it wouldn't be on TV.
Wow. That is hard to imagine.
Yeah, in today's world, it is.
So I have a couple questions for you. My first question for you is, who is your all-time favorite Buckeye player?
That probably would be Archie Griffith. And when you look at the Heisman winners today, what are they looking for? They're looking for a Heisman and then they go to the pros. Back then, they couldn't go to the pros until they graduated. So when he won it as a junior, he had no choice but to come back and play football again as a senior, and that's why he won too. So at that time, it wasn't such a big deal, but now with all these years of seeing all these Heisman players win it and then leave, to me, it's a little bit more special.
That is definitely more special. So who's your favorite Buckeye that's on the team this year?
This year, it's probably Chris Olave. He is someone that no matter where the ball is, he's going to go get it. He's got one of the best pass receiving hands. They're so soft, and he just knows where to go to get it. So that's one of my favorites.
I love Chris Olave. He's one of my favorite players to watch too. My next question for you is, whenever you see someone wearing an Ichigan shirt, what do you feel?
I guess probably the first thing was, poor guy. But if you look at it, he's probably saying the same thing about me.
So going into the game this weekend, what is your favorite memory from previous games against TTUN?
Well, there's too many of them. I don't know if I have a favorite. I think one of them was when Woody Hayes was still the coach and the score was near the end of the game and Ohio State was winning 50-12. They scored a touchdown to make 50 points. And Michigan had 12, and there was only a few minutes left in the game. Well, Woody Hayes, instead of kicking an extra point, he went for 2 points to rub it in. And they asked him afterwards, why did you go for 2 when the score was so lopsided? And he said, because I could. The sad part of that for Buckeye fans is the next year, they went up to Ann Arbor, and they had won 22 games in a row, and they were national champions the year before, and they went up to Ann Arbor, and Michigan was still smarting over that, going for the 2 points, and Ohio State got beat that year and ruined their whole season.
Ugh, that would ruin a season. So what are you most looking forward to this Saturday?
Well, normally there's a different intensity level on both sides of the ball when they play this game. It doesn't matter who has won more games during the season. You can throw all those away. It's the intensity of the game, I think, is why it's so different than any other game that they play.
Yeah, that intensity. You're so right with that. And I remember you saying that to me before. Doesn't matter what their record is that season, all bets are off when you get to the game. So one last question for you. If the game gets canceled after we record this, what will your reaction be?
I'll be disappointed. I'll probably go ride my bicycle, take out my frustrations.
Sounds like a good thing to do. So thank you, Dad, so much for joining me. This means a lot to me.
It means a lot to me, too.
Also, thank you so much for raising me to be a fan of the best football team in the world.
And they also have the best band in the world.
That they do. That was some amazing history we got to learn together. And I'm so grateful I grew up listening to stories like that from my dad. Heading into the game this week, I also reached out to several other Ohio State fans and asked them about some of their favorite memories from previous games against TTUN. At Rudy Bucks shared a memory that was just epic. As a third-generation Buckeye himself, he shared that when Ohio State lost, he would only take calls from his first-generation Buckeye grandparents. This is the memory he shared. I can go back to my sophomore year at OSU, 1994. One of their receivers said they were going to get Coop fired. The Buckeyes didn't like that. Final score was 22-6. We rushed the field. I ripped up some of the field and kept it in my room until the end of the year. At Rudy Bucks, that is so dope. I asked him if he still had that piece of field, and he said no, unfortunately, because it was natural grass and it didn't last. But what an incredible experience to be a part of. From Allison, I think my favorite memory has to be 2018, when Olave had the game of his life. He's one of my favorites. Allison, He is one of my favorite players too. And that is easily one of my second favorite games, when Olave broke out and made everyone start paying attention to him. Those 2 touchdowns and the blocked punt cemented his legendary status in the game as a freshman. Plus, rolling into that game, all we heard being talked about all week long was the Team Up North's revenge tour. And then to win that game, 62-39, was amazing. At Tiger W45 also had that game as one of his faves, saying, "I also loved 2018 when OSU was the underdog and then thoroughly demolished them." However, for his absolute favorite game, he told me, I would have to say 2002. It wasn't a great game, only won by 5, but it put us in the championship game, and the rest was history. From Dylan Freeman, his favorite memory was Troy Smith's scramble and throw to Gonzalez. Dylan, what a great memory to relive. This was from the 2005 game in the final moments of the 4th quarter, and it was an epic throw, setting Ohio State up for the touchdown that they scored to win the game. This next memory comes from Corey, co-host of the Scarlet N Great show, which, by the way, if you guys haven't checked out, you have got to. I'll be sharing a memory from the other co-host, Johnny, in just a moment, but those two have an incredible show that they put together for Buckeye Nation. I'll link to their YouTube channel and Twitter handles in the show notes below if you want to give them a look. Corey says, "My favorite memory is 2004. We were 6-4 going into the game, and they were ranked in the top 10, I think. If there was ever a moment we should have lost, but showed that the tide was truly turning, that was it. The culture just became different. It was our mission to beat this team every year." Corey, I'm really glad you brought this memory up, because that game highlights how important this rivalry is to Ohio State. Plus, if there's one thing that's better than just beating TTUN, it's beating them when they're ranked higher than us. Another fan favorite is that 2016 game. Tim Collins shared his memories of the ending of that game with me on Twitter. He says, "I was at that game in 2016. It's the only time I've been. When Samuel scored that game winner, I ran to the top of the stadium and hugged everyone on the way back to my seat. I remember telling my dad, this is one that they will make a documentary about in 20 years. And we were here." That is truly epic, Tim. And Johnny, the other co-host of the Scarlet N Great show that I mentioned earlier, also had this 2016 heart attack double overtime game as his fave. He told me the story about how he was watching it with one of his close friends, Bill, and his family. He said that when the game ended, they all went nuts. The closest person standing next to him was Bill's wife, and Johnny grabbed her up in a big bear hug and started spinning her around in circles like she was a little kid. They were all hugging and celebrating in ecstasy over the outcome of the game. All these stories got me choked up as I think about my own favorite Buckeye memories. There's just so many of them, and we have so much to be thankful about as a Buckeye fan, to be rooting for one of the truly greatest teams there is. I have to say that double overtime game is my personal favorite too. I remember my head just exploding in happiness when JT ran for it on that 4th down, and I remember holding my breath in anticipation as they reviewed the spot. There was probably literally this much space between my face and the screen I was watching the game on as I waited for them to confirm the ruling on the field. And I went absolutely bonkers when they confirmed it and cried tears of joy when Samuel ran it in for a touchdown, sealing the victory. And then hearing Harbaugh say, "I'm utterly disappointed with the officiating today." Afterwards, it was just the cherry on top. Those are some great memories of previous games against TTUN. Now let's take a look at some of the history behind the game. According to Wikipedia, the very first meeting against Ohio State and that team up north was in 1897, and the rivalry has been played annually since 1918. The game itself has been played as the final regular season game since 1935, with the exceptions of 1942, 1986, and 1998. If it's not played this year, this is the first time it's been canceled in 103 years. That's insane. Looking at the series history, Ohio State has played Michigan a total of 115 times. We have won 51, tied 6, and lost 58. This week, I'm not going to dig into the players and the coaches like I normally would, because to be honest, I think we all know all that we want to about their head coach, Jim Harbaugh. And at the moment I'm recording this, we don't actually know who their quarterback will be. Since it appears that both Joe Milton and Cade McNamara are battling injuries, it might be Dan Villari, but we're just not sure. And we'll find all that out once the game gets played. Before I sign off, let's take a quick look at what's going on in the Twitter sphere. If you are on Twitter, please find me. I love connecting with all of you guys on Twitter and getting to chat with you about what's going on with Ohio State. It has been so fun for me. This first tweet by SGO was something that was sent out in response to seeing Justin Fields boarding the plane before the game last weekend against Michigan State. If you ever wondered how important you are to us, just look at Twitter. It is blowing up with this picture of you. I also felt the breeze from the collective exhaling of Buckeye Nation. We love our QB1. Go Buckeyes. SGO, I felt that breeze too, all the way out in California. It was such a relief to see that picture of him boarding the plane as we were getting ready to take on MSU the next day. This next tweet from Jay Book is a great tweet about perspective. This Michigan State team manhandled Michigan and Northwestern up front. If our Buckeyes were able to beat Michigan State by so much last weekend, the game is gonna get ugly for Michigan. This next tweet sent out by the Ohio State University Marching Band is amazing. They say, fix that for you. You gotta love it. Thank you, the Ohio State University Marching Band. Regardless of whether we get to play the game this weekend or not, at the time of this recording, OSU Clock reminded us that it has been 3,299 days since TTUN has beat Ohio State in football. I think Jess speaks for us all with this next tweet. Man, I'm gonna be sad if I can't watch Fields put up 100 points on Michigan. Jess, I think we're all gonna be sad. I wanna see that so bad. This next tweet from Mecca Dawn, I was trying to explain to someone my love for Ohio State football, and the best analogy I could think of was like family. The joy you feel when they succeed and people speak positively about them, and the rage you feel when someone speaks negatively. I know it's not the same, but yeah, Mecca Dawn, that is a great analogy. This past week, I myself was trying to explain to someone who's not an Ohio State fan the significance of playing Michigan each and every year in the game. And it was hard to put all of those feelings into words, but I think you captured it beautifully. We're getting close, Buckeyes. Close to the end of this regular season. Close to the end of getting to see our QB1, Justin Fields, dominate on the football field. Let's cherish the moments that we have left watching this Buckeye team play, no matter if the game gets played or if we simply get to play in a different game. As we get ready for this game on Saturday, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed this video and hit the bell icon for notification when my next hype video drops. I am so glad we've been on this ride together this year, and I'll see you on the other side of this game. OH.